So we have heard from our reporting officers this morning in their summary statements and have heard from submitters who have come to present to us. And now we will just do our wrap up of today's hearing. And over to you, Hamish, with the recap.
Usual practice, we'll just go through a series of questions, and some are high level, some are more detailed, and majority are transport related. So first is the theories on the high traffic generating thresholds. So the first question relates to whether the average daily traffic generation thresholds apply to construction traffic or operational traffic, or both.
It's all of the metrics, not just the AEADT.
Oh, okay.
I think there's in front of me. Go to that row or table.
Yeah. Okay. Verify that. Then the next one is to could the information requirements for basic and full be made more explicit? So there's the table, and I think my answer to one of your questions was it's implied in terms of what's basic and what's full, but that can be made clearer.
Yes, because I think of there was only number 12 that was the difference, but it's not just the topics that need to be covered, it's the level of detail that's commensurate. Yep. And maybe that word commensurate could go in there somewhere. Yeah.
Question 3. Again, high traffic generating, provide examples or examples of when and how the standard would be applied in practice, and include details of the rules and activity status under the operative district plan, proposed district plan. So there was a question around that this is already done at the moment in practice. So in terms of our requirement for a traffic assessment, I was keen to understand what were the situations where those current traffic assessments were required.
And wasn't there something around the thresholds being operational or construction?
Yes,
that further down. Okay.
That was the very first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Keep up, please.
Maybe I did need that other coffee.
I think more on question 3.
Only was that the example where we're thinking of the fresh choice?
Yeah, as one potential example.
Yeah,
could be provided. Question 4. So this is again high traffic generating activities, and evidence from the fuel companies whether it only manages new activities or whether it manages additions and alterations. Is that clear or explicit enough? And then a question around whether there should be exceptions for service stations because of the issues that were highlighted there. That might be too narrowly defined. But that was I took that at face value based on the panel's questions around that activity. So it's whether you want that question brought into other types of land use activities.
That prejudice.
Yeah, I think it's a B. It's or a new A, but whether the relief should apply just to service stations, if granted, or other traffic generating activities such as supermarkets, and it'll come back to the relief sought by the fuel stations, but they may well have kept it broad, but we haven't really received any evidence from anyone other than them. So maybe that might be of a mind only to apply it to service stations, if at all. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and then B follows on nicely. If exceptions are to be granted, that's the whole thing about what are the options, the percentage, the listing activities, qualification of that listing, provided that there's no change to the authorised access or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Then the next one, partly, I think, answered this question already around, is it efficient to apply the standard to subdivision? The subdivision chapter already requires consideration of traffic effects. And then there was the first sub-question, what's the high level planning document that supports this approach?
Yes.
Request for the regional council to advise what that is. And then second question was their scope and the regional council submission to add reference to subdivision.
Yeah.
Sub-questions around how it was summarised and were there any further submissions on that
Yes.
point?
The answers to A and B won't necessarily answer the question in 5.
Correct. Those sort of supplementary questions to question 5. And it could be that the answer to B is the only answer, because there may not be scope. Question 6. How is clause B relating to the effects on, this is in the policy now, not the standards.
Yeah.
How is clause B on the effects of amenity and character of the road implemented in the rules and standards? And then there's a subsequent question about what's the purpose of this clause in the transport policy.
Same with amenity. Yeah.
Next one relates to the hood aerodrome obstacle limitation services. So checking with the manager of the aerodrome to what Councillor Bauer raised. So we'll check that and report back. And
Okay, so the question is actually, there is an existing grass runway at that thing. It's the, get a word in front of it,
Operational.
No, sorry,
Proposed.
no, proposed, not proposed. Northern.
Northern grass one. The Victor,
The big is right here,
right?
northern, because the northern one's been,
Existing runways 0624 Northern Vector Grass.
the northern one, which is a real short thing that they put out here.
We'll check that and report back. Then a question relating to another transport policy around multimodal transport. Reconsider the wording of the new text clause B, where it's requiring multimodal options when the policy starts to support.
Yes.
So you've asked for the consistency.
Yeah.
Requiring
Yeah.
support policy.
It wasn't a matter of chucking the baby out with the bathwater. It's just making sure there's some alignment.
Correct. Then there's a general question in response to Fulton Hogan's statement around on-site facilities for quarries.
Yeah.
Asked to clarify what were the rules and standards that apply to quarries, and also what the activity status of quarries were under the zone rules. And then these last two relate to Adamson Shaw's evidence around and questions from the panel earlier today. So vehicle crossing formation, reconsider the requirement for a 30-metre distance from the seal edge, from the edge of the seal into the accessway. And could options include different standards for the status of the road and also the number of vehicle movements? And also clarify if the vehicle formation standard applies to all land use activities in subdivision and whether it's appropriate for temporary activities or access points with limited use. Farms is the example there.
Yes, I think that's the Robertson exclusion.
Yeah, and that's why when the planners were here, when the Adamson Shaw were here, that's why I brought it up again, because you clearly told us that exceptions are made and realism comes into play. And then Adamson Shaw said, well, hang on, they were having some issues where the rules were being pertained as just good to get some clarity on.
Yep. So no, understand exactly what's been asked there. And then related to that is a rural access way where Adamson Shaw didn't ask too many questions about it, but that's what they commented in terms of the smaller scale subdivisions and developments. So I put a question there about reconsider the requirements for turning radius and setting requirements. And again, along the same lines as before. Should there be some variation or recognition of that?
Under transport, did you have a question for NZTA about infrastructure? So I missed that. Was it right?
Oh, the infrastructure. No, I haven't got that. So that was in the roading corridor.
Yeah. Same question we asked under the utilities.
So I think probably got the question better. I can copy the question from last week.
Yeah, it's exactly the same question. Don't like making new questions, but
Does that capture the telcos issue?
yeah, that's what it was about.
Yeah,
Under the rule.
It was power and telecommunications and
About other infrastructure,
Yeah.
they're asking for that to be included. This is about,
Role of transport corridors. That was under.
addition to rule
yeah, was that
to
first issue
to include
that we discussed with Mr. McCarrison?
Yeah.
to include telco requirement is in is
It was the role of transport corridor policy, P3. Yeah. And to discuss with Mr. Anderson is what? He was saying that there's a policy gap for a consenting pathway outside the NES.
So that's everything on transport. Anything else with this?
Think of anything else? Think of them.
yeah, that's mine. Yeah,
You've clarified the hood,
yeah.
what applies there. The designation and the rules.
Would you like that in writing?
Yeah. Yep.
Moving to subdivisions. So the first one is new policy that the regional council sought around freshwater. So reconsider how this new policy is implemented in the subdivision chapter rules and standards based on the response to Greater Wellington's answer to this question at the hearing.
Yes.
So understood Mr. O'Neill might come back with further explanation. I think he was going to give that more thought.
It's also whether reliance on section 108 and 220 is sufficient when it comes to controlled activity, and whether controlled activity status would actually enable the policy to be actually implemented.
Isn't there something about that as in the hearing?
plus I couldn't work out how I couldn't find the link there between.
Wasn't there something also in relation to that on the outcome of the previous conference?
On the expert conferencing.
Yeah.
Could you actually just expand on 108 and 220? Because when I read it, I couldn't see the link. I couldn't see what the argument was with them.
So, yep.
Talks about conditions, but it wasn't as I couldn't see the link. between-
108's conditions on resource consent, the other subdivision.
Yeah,
Isn't it? Yeah.
the actual act, I couldn't work it out.
I guess there's a so what question there, Hamish, too, is that if conditions aren't going to cut it, is there a need for the policy? Because that's the other side of effective. What's the rationale for the policy? Is there Just on A, there's no wording required here, but Greater Wellington haven't provided any methods or rules or standard to implement the proposed policy, have they?
Not in the evidence from my understanding. I think indirectly or they've inferred that the Three Waters chapter that they sought
Yes.
would implement that policy.
Okay.
Now that that's
Gone.
maybe not being pursued, that or not agreed, then if is there what's the alternative provisions? Question 2, that's reverse sensitivity. Further explain the relationship between the subdivision chapter rules and standards and the zone chapter rules. And this is the relationship between the and so on, and then advise what submissions were received on the rural zone setback standards for dwellings from existing intensive primary production activities.
Yes. On number 2, you gave us the verbal answer that at subdivision about the building platform. Yes, will you capture that? And
Yeah, that's the answer to that question. Part of the answer to that question.
okay, thank you.
And then there is probably one we added for the road corridors above, but it's reconsider recognition for allotments to have connectivity to transport, to telecommunications infrastructure. And then a point related to that is the additional matter of control that's sought should be worded as an information requirement rather than a connection requirement.
Yes. In relation to the expert competing, the things that we want the planners to consider is whether there's a policy lacuna as a result of sub 6, is it sub 6, which is the standard on telecommunications. And Mr. Anderson was saying that they needed those objectives and policy provisions to back up what was already in sub 6. Fancy word for again.
Sorry? Yeah, I had to look it up. That's 2 years of education. Why use 3 letters when you can use 6?
Exactly.
And then last one was with the subdivision chapter and all the recommended amendments through different chapters.
Yeah.
We'll provide you a complete chapter with all the recommended amendments annotated with what's recommended where.
Yeah, that's the word.
And then finally, just to note with the financial contributions one, that will include the subdivision chapter, will include the recommendation from the financial contributions chapter.
Perfect.
That's the list.
Do we need to put something in there around expert mediation between Mr. O'Brien and Alistair?
This is being recorded.
I don't think-
Discussion, wasn't it?
This was very quick. I asked him. So that's why I use it.
Talk from me.
Anything from anyone else? No. If I could get somebody to move the whiteboard, then that concludes hearing stream 8, and we can stand and do our closing.
Oh, right. That's all you want.
Really, it didn't work for me then, did it?
Unless David would like to draw any more pictures on the whiteboard for us.
That's what I was wondering what it was.
Do we need any this week?
Blocks the camera for me.
Okay, so kia whakaarea, titapu, kia wātia, aia, kia turuki, whakatala, kia turuki, whakatala, Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.